Welcome to the Baseball Insiders. I am Adam Weinrib, joined today by a very special guest co-host with Robert Murray on the road. We wish him well. We have brought along for a very big episode because apparently Pete Rose and Shoeless Jackson are both eligible for the Hall of Fame now. So we were like, hey, it's going to be a fun episode. You know, no huge midweek drops. You never know. And then, oh, wait, there's the biggest topic of all time to talk about. But I wouldn't want to do it with anyone other than my co-host, Fansided's White Sox expert at Southside Showdown and Survivor Season 47's Sam Phalen. Sam, thank you so much for joining me today live on the Baseball Insiders.
Oh, I'm pumped, Adam. Very excited. We got so much fun stuff to talk about. The White Sox are a little bit fun. Pete Rose and the Hall of Fame are making the episode fun. So going to be a great show. Thank you for having me fill in for Robert here in the midterm.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun one. Happy Wednesday to everybody watching along. And if you're following on all podcast platforms, welcome. Reminder, the show is live every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at the very normal and easy to follow times of 3:30, 1 o'clock, then 3:30 again on the Friday. Robert Murray does a private Q&A in our Discord channel, 3 o'clock Eastern time on Thursday afternoon. So if you are not a member of the Baseball Insiders, if you are not in that Discord, good time to hop in. You can ask us questions between shows if there's anything we don't address. If you are an all-star, we've got exclusive Robert content for you that goes up on that shorts feed. You also get priority responses in this chat. So hit us with your questions. Sam and I will also try to address what we can. If you are not subscribed to the Moonshot, you should be. That's our weekly baseball email newsletter where the Fansided MLB team, including Robert Murray, break down all the biggest stories in the big leagues with humor, insight, behind-the-scenes info. You can read that and more on the Baseball Insiders feed on fansided.com at fansided.com/baseball-insiders for Robert's rumors and notes, humor and insight from yours truly, and the best of baseball and pop culture from the team. All right, too much to get to, so let's not linger on the ad reads. Oh, the commenters are so mad. They're like, more ad reads. I'm like, please, we'll do those later. It's fine. Sam, I want to talk about the White Sox first, like you said, because you are a tried and true diehard. I was so excited when we first spoke to know that not only are you passionate about the game, but you are passionate about a team that has a long and storied history and does not get discussed enough. And when they do, they get mocked because of last season, and they probably don't deserve that label. So before we get into the modern game and sort of the trending news this week, what's the origin point for your White Sox fandom? Were you right in the sweet spot of that 05 title, too young to appreciate it, or it meant the world to you? I mean, it feels like maybe you caught them at the right time.
Yeah, well, look, anybody who is in Chicago and is a White Sox fan, especially in recent years, they didn't choose this life, Adam. This life chose them. You know, it's inevitable, right? I would love to be going to Wrigley Field and have a passion for the Cubs, but instead it's a passionate disdain for the Chicago Cubs because it runs in the blood. It actually starts for me with my grandfather who, grew up in West Virginia, and he used to have a handheld radio in West Virginia when he was a little boy that he could tune to Chicago White Sox games, believe it or not, on the radio. And so he started listening to the White Sox and, fell in love with the White Sox from a very young age. He moved to Chicago, raised my dad as a White Sox fan. I was raised a White Sox fan. My brother was raised a White Sox fan. So it has forever been just kind of the family business, rooting for the Chicago White Sox. And I still think I was a little too young to really appreciate 2005. I remember kind of the excitement of that season, but I was asleep during the World Series pretty much every time the White Sox were playing. So I assumed, they'll be back. Like, this will be fun. This is not a big deal. And, I long for those days when the White Sox are playing meaningful games in October ever since.
Yeah, I feel you on that, that childhood thing of this will never end. And then, obviously I grew up during the Yankees dynasty. There's a lot. I mean, a dynasty is more than one. So I get it. But it was that thing of this is every year and it's great. I love my favorite annual tradition of being in the World Series. And then you get to adulthood and you're like, this is actually hard. It's harder for some fan bases than others, but it was that thing of one now would be so special. And 4 when I was a kid, I was just like, yeah, every year this happens and it's delightful. But you got a little bit of hope now, I would say. Coming off of last year, there's never been, never been a tougher year to be a White Sox fan, arguably. but there are plenty of reasons to believe in both the short and long term. So like you're talking about the current White Sox, what is sort of giving you that hope? What are you hanging your hat on the most that you've seen so far this year at either the major or minor league level?
Yeah, so I think there's two things that stand out to White Sox fans right now as being our beacons of light and our hope for the future. And number one is the young pitching that the White Sox have within the organization. You just look at the major league level right now, and there's Davis Martin and Sean Burke and Jonathan Cannon. Shane Smith comes out of nowhere as a Rule 5 draft pick that now looks like a potential all-star and frontline starter for them. That's 4 guys right there. All of them are under club control through 2030. So the White Sox have starting pitching for days, and they're going to have it for the foreseeable future. And then you look into the minor leagues, they have the 2 highest rated left-handed pitching prospects in all of baseball with Hagen Smith and Noah Schultz. There's, another group of young, exciting arms that are a little bit underrated. Unfortunately for the Sox, they lost a lot of those guys to injury this year. But Drew Thorpe was a really attractive arm that they got back in the Dylan Cease trade from San Diego that looked really good once he debuted, had kind of tapered off towards the end of his rookie season before going down with Tommy John surgery. Mason Adams, Aldrin Batista. There's a lot of names in the White Sox organization. And that really started once they brought in Brian Bannister as sort of their special advisor for pitching. He has redefined their process. He's added a changeup to Davis Martin and to Sean Burke and advanced their analytics profiles to now be legitimate major leaguers. So if you're a Sox fan, the position players, the lineup, the hitters, all very concerning, but this team can pitch, and it's what has kind of made them look more competitive in the games they've played in 2025. If you're going beyond the roster a little bit, Adam, I think White Sox fans are excited about a potential change in ownership that could be lined up with the Ishbia brothers kind of having ownership stake now. Nobody owns more of the Chicago White Sox than Matt and Justin Ishbia right now. Now, Jerry Reinsdorf is still the controlling owner, but if you look at the Ishbias, at their net worth, it's a Steve Cohen type of ownership group that could be coming into the White Sox within the next few years. And that is what we're all crossing our fingers for, because this team needs to spend money.
Every winning team has one common link between them. And it's like, it's the pitching program that you mentioned too. Like, teams invest that overflowing capital in developing the things behind the scenes that some fans don't notice until it's too late and the moment's upon us. Like, and oh wait, the White Sox actually have this budding rotation under Bannister. But the connective tissue is that you don't need to blow the doors off. You don't have to be the Mets. You don't necessarily have to be Steve Cohen, but you have to be willing. You can't say you're flexible like the Pirates and never offer a deal higher than 3 years and $40 million to Francisco Liriano. You're right. You need that pipeline financially and in terms of the prospects that you've got budding. And that marriage might be closer than a lot of fans who are only familiar with last year's White Sox realize.
Yeah, I mean, that ultimately is what White Sox fans, it's in the back of their mind, right? As optimistic as Sox fans want to be about this young budding pitching staff and, Braden Montgomery in the minor leagues. And I see we've got some comments asking for Jace Laviolette. Like, what is to come for the White Sox in terms of prospect development? There's a lot of exciting things. But we've been here before as the White Sox. We've done this rebuild. We've had 10 of the top 100 prospects at one time and brought them all up and failed to supplement, and it sputtered out after 1 or 2 playoff appearances. So you don't want to get back into that spot where the moment has passed you by and you look up and you realize you're at the cusp of another rebuild. You have to do what as you mentioned, Steve Cohen and some of the better owners in baseball are doing, which is being willing to supplement your core with the necessary financial investment.
I am glad you brought up that last White Sox core too, because baseball moves so fast. The prevailing White Sox narrative has been that record-setting loss total last year, but it was not long ago that it was Eloy and Tim Anderson and Luis Robert and the whole crew and Carlos Rodon, my new friend. But I do think every time you do a great job on the site, and everyone who does not read Southside Showdown should, but you do a great job reminding White Sox fans of that core's current, activity, which is it's wild to think that Eloy Jimenez is in AAA with the Durham Bulls and Tim Anderson.
Yeah, I mean, it's shocking, right? Like, White Sox fans felt like they blinked, and Tim Anderson went from being a perennial batting title contender and being 15 to 20 home run power every year to not being able to hit the ball out of the ballpark, and his average sinking down to 240. Yoan Moncada, it was the same song and dance every year, and you were just waiting, bracing for injury. Lord knows what happened to Eloy Jimenez. Eloy Jimenez, we felt like would be able to fall into 30 home runs every season just because of his light tower power that he was bringing to the ballpark. And towards the back end of his stint with the White Sox, not only was he not hitting and not staying healthy, he wasn't driving the baseball in the air. It was sort of inexplicable how quickly it all unraveled. And that is kind of what traumatizes these organizations moving forward, despite optimistic futures, is that if you don't do it correctly and you don't draft correctly and you don't spend when you're at the top of the mountain, your time up there is going to be so short. 2021, the White Sox go 93-69, and they go 93-69, missing Luis Robert Jr. for over half the season, missing Eloy Jimenez for over half the season. They had Jake Lamb and Brian Goodwin taking regular at bats in their lineup, and somehow they had positive vibes and a good enough core to still be the AL Central runaway winners. 3 years later, they're the worst team in the history of baseball. I don't understand how you got there, how they let it get there. And so I think anybody, Pirates fans know this, Rockies fans know this right now, like, you're hesitant to get into bed with this ownership group and this front office again when they haven't given us reason to believe that they're going to really go all in when it's time.
Yeah. One final lingering White Sox question. I wonder, and you mentioned that, hey, it's a family thing and it's something you can't get out of, really. Like, if you're a White Sox fan in Chicago, it's generation to generation. It's a life that chose you.
Yeah.
But that 2021 team not long ago, like, the vibes were quite high. And I, as sort of an outsider, struggled to perceive what it was like to have the vibes that high with the White Sox and the Cubs the way they were, and how Chicago handled both going on at the same. The Cubs receding at that point and the White Sox being supreme between the two teams. Do you view, like, how can Chicago be a White Sox town? Is it a White Sox town? And is there just sort of a rev share model for the two teams when they're both going well?
Look, if both teams are going to go well, Chicago is always going to have Cubs pride more than it has White Sox pride flying through it, right? Like, it's what, 75-25, 70-30 split on fandom. And it was very hard for White Sox fans to watch the Cubs win a World Series and be perennial contenders while we were in the middle of a rebuild. But what I think 2021 showed the White Sox and showed the rest of baseball is that the White Sox fan base is one of the most passionate and rowdy fan bases in the entire league when there is a winning product on the field. I don't think Chicago is a Sox town in numbers, but I think it is in spirit. And when you look at what the White Sox represent for many Chicagoans and what White Sox fans are, it is the blood and the just Chicago to its core. It is blue collar. It is hardworking. It is the overlooked. It is the second team, right? The second city's second team, as the White Sox are often known. Chicago doesn't get the media coverage of LA or New York, and I think Chicagoans are resentful of that. The White Sox get even less media coverage than their crosstown rivals with the Cubs. And I think White Sox fans are resentful from that. And there is a little bit of little brother that exists, but little brother's got some fight. Little brother is pesky. And when the White Sox are rolling, White Sox fans are loud and they let you hear it. So if you've seen the clips of that blackout game, that is the core, that is the spirit of what a Chicago sports fan looks like. And how do we get back there? It's a winning baseball team. Like, White Sox fans will show up for this team. I don't want to hear about the new stadium. I don't want to hear about where it's located. All of that stuff is fun and exciting. They will go to 35th and Shields. They will go to Bridgeport. They will show up to the most generic ballpark in the entire league if you put a winner on the field, because that is how much White Sox fans care.
I am excited to continue following this team's journey with you and reading your coverage too and working alongside you on this stuff, because I find this fan base fascinating. I will say the most generic ballpark in baseball is in Washington, D.C., and that will maybe
Okay.
never be topped.
Maybe. Yeah.
We're certainly close. I am excited for this next generation of the White Sox, and not just because I was a huge Kyle Teal fan out of the draft. I'm excited for the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hopeful that it doesn't take as long as the White Sox are sort of making you think it is. You're right. When they hired Chris Getz, they had said the reason they were hiring Chris Getz is because they didn't want it to be a long-term rebuild. And then they proceeded to go 41 and 121. But hopefully with Edgar Caro and Chase Mydroth and now Tim Elko called up and the young core of starting pitchers, hopefully your guy Kyle Teal is not that far away and can be on the south side before long. I'm hoping that it's not that far and that we can finally have White Sox fans have something to be excited about again, and that'll be reflected in everything over at Southside Showdown.
I think we are getting closer, and I so appreciate the window into what's going on, and I think our commenters did as well, because we got some White Sox fans showing up today. Let's go with a couple of the quick hits, big news from the week that needs to be broken down. We will get to the one that you're thinking about, but I do want to start with as large a scope as you can get, really. Team USA and the way that the World Baseball Classic is coming together for 2026. Team USA made it to the they got all the way to the final. They got all the way to the iconic at bat against Shohei Ohtani with Mike Trout last time around. They fell short. Many reasons. Japan is an extremely strong team. It comes as no surprise. If you told someone before the tournament that's who won, that person would shrug. So we're not really talking about an upset or USA blew it. But the lineup for Team USA, fantastic. The pitching staff, bunch of old Cardinals, and not the ones that just chose the White Sox fan
good ones.
No, not the good ones. Adam Wainwright, Lance Lynn, Miles Michaelis, Merrill Kelly was in there. Brady Singer was in there. I looked at a roster and Nestor Cortez is listed. I went to the World Baseball Classic. I root for the Yankees. I don't remember him. I don't think he made it all the way to the World Baseball Classic, but apparently he was a part of the initial pool. Still not going to cut it. So far, we have Aaron Judge committed on offense to be the new Captain America. David Wright said it's okay to call him that, so I will. But Paul Skenes yesterday changed the whole calculus for me in committing. And as someone who attended the Air Force Academy, as someone who I learned this week wants to serve after his baseball career is over, it's really no surprise that he's as enthusiastic as he has been. But this is the biggest turning of the tides. Aaron Judge is one thing, a great face for the roster. They've always had offensive talent. They have never had Paul Skenes, and potentially those who want to follow in Paul Skenes' footsteps. I know Tarek Skubal said he wants to do it too. Whether the Tigers will let him without an extension is another thing. But how big a deal is it to you that Team USA has finally turned the corner in their biggest weak spot heading into next year's tournament?
Yeah, I think it's huge, like unironically huge, right? I think it's easy for baseball fans to roll their eyes at the idea of the World Baseball Classic. Who cares when we're in the middle of the baseball season competing for a World Series right now? But the World Baseball Classic was so much bigger than I think a lot of people anticipated the last time that we saw it come around. It was so much more fun for the baseball community, and I think got a lot of eyes, not just from diehard baseball fans, but from baseball curious people in the United States that were trying to watch some of the top stars. Headliners are huge, and as you said, people follow in other footsteps. If Aaron Judge is on this roster, if Paul Skenes is on this roster, well, I expect to see Corbin Carroll and Pete Crow Armstrong and, Cal Raleigh on this roster. And I think Tarek Skubal and Garrett Crochet and Hunter Brown and Max Fried, all of those names are now in play. And you could end up with a truly star-studded best player in baseball kind of roster for Team USA, which should put them in a position to once again compete for the World Baseball Classic title and hopefully converts a lot of people to the excitement that exists in baseball.
Yeah, I absolutely know someone whose passion for baseball was ignited by the intensity of that tournament. Like, you and I care about the World Series and the daily grind and the 162, but for some people, that is baseball to them. And it's very exciting to have these big names in the mix.
You can watch new players too that are like, oh, that guy looked fun. That guy that's on, Team Mexico. And then you say, oh, that guy, Jarren Duran. Yeah, he's a Boston Red Sox. And then all of a sudden you've got investment into that player and into a team. And that is what baseball needs more of. It is more of these types of events that get national eyes on them, and where you can show off the best that baseball has to offer for what everybody likes to say is a dying sport. I think there's a really fun youth movement in baseball right now that, if it's marketed appropriately, can be really good for the sport moving forward.
Unequivocally, and I'm excited for the next tournament. I had fun in Miami. I will probably try to go again. That youth movement is manifesting a little bit in the AL Central in the way that the Detroit Tigers are constructed. I hate to pivot to the Tigers briefly, but they have the best record in the American League, and they had a huge win last night with Javi Baez leading the way with 2 3-run home runs against the Boston Red Sox. So maybe that was enough of a rebuke for Detroit towards Alex Bregman and his free agency decision. Like, the Javi homers speak for themselves. The Red Sox bullpen meltdown speak for themselves. But this is Bregman's first series in Detroit since waiting all offseason to choose a pretty sizable, chunky 1 year with an opt-out afterwards from the Boston Red Sox. So he got what he wanted, and Alex Cora got what he wanted. But there was a sizable Tigers offer out there for a very long time that he chose not to commit to. And he wanted the only 1 year of security in Boston with the familiarity of Cora, his old bench coach. He said this week that signing with the Red Sox was, quote, not a diss of Detroit, but the Detroit fans have booed him anyway. And I wonder, look, I'm not surprised that he chose Boston and the Green Monster and Fenway Park, but it was a little bit of a diss of Detroit hanging out on that, lingering on that offer for 2 months and then just going to Boston anyway when you could have done that from the jump, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's disrespectful for sure. I mean, this is very clear. Alex Bregman did not want to be a Detroit Tiger. It was, a fine plan B for him, I'm sure, but certainly not what he wanted. Otherwise, he would be a Detroit Tiger. This is, tale as old as time. You see, like, somebody hits you up on a Friday night. They want to make plans with you. They say, are you free? Maybe you just don't respond to the text for a little bit. I'd like to maybe find something else that, do I have any better offers out there? Do I have anything else that sounds a little bit more fun? If not, sure, we can hang out. But that's what Alex Bregman did to the Detroit Tigers. So Tigers fans, boo away as far as I'm concerned, right? Like, I'd boo Alex Bregman anyway. Don't give up the 2017 thing. We haven't forgotten. But also, yeah, I mean, a guy who clearly didn't want to be a part of what you had going on. AJ Hinch had a famous quote a few years ago of, if you want to come here, you'll be here. And if not, we'll beat you. Right. And I think Detroit, the Tigers fans embrace that mentality. If you don't want to be a Tiger, that's fine. We'll have fun knocking you out of the playoffs.
Yeah, Bregman was sitting on that text from the Tigers for like 2 months, and then he finally wrote back, and they're like, "Dude, Friday was 2 months ago.
Yeah.
On here, we're not. Yeah, we can't go out. That's over." Yeah, I 100% agree with you. Hey, no shame, and like the comments are saying, he knows what he can do at Fenway Park. He wanted that to be his home ballpark for 81 games. Plus,
I don't blame Alex Bregman at all. I don't blame. I would rather play for the Red Sox than the Tigers too. I've been to Fenway Park and I was enthralled with the magic that was in that building. It's a fun place to play, big market, Fenway Park, good for the numbers, get paid more. But if you're the Tigers, yeah, chip on the shoulder. Why not?
Yeah, a franchise that exists with an eternal chip on its shoulder. All right, here's the Whopper. We got to do it. It's honestly, is it fun to do? I can't believe Rob Manfred did this to us again. But White Sox icon Shoeless Joe Jackson, now eligible for the Baseball Hall of Fame, passed away as part of the blanket policy to remove these folks who've passed from the ineligible list. He is now off the permanently ineligible list. So is Pete Rose, a figure who wanted to get into the Hall of Fame desperately during his lifetime, was not elected or placed on a ballot or put up for election. And now Rob Manfred is essentially saying the investigative work of the past, anyone who worked to, craft this ineligible list in the first place, once someone is deceased, they're no longer a threat to the integrity of the game, Rob Manfred said, which, yeah, certainly no deceased person has ever interacted with and affected present morals, or like, that's never happened. So why would it happen here? At the basis level, I do feel as if Rob Manfred could say what he wants about not putting pressure on and just having this be an independent decision, but this does feel maybe to me fated to be as soon as they are able to get in, they maybe will be. They'll probably be on these era committees where all they need is 75% of like 16 crusty old baseball writers and retired players. But curious as to your thoughts, I guess, on both, if you think it will happen and why now.
Why now is I'm not sure, right? Like I agree with you. I don't think this is like an independent Rob Manfred decision. Maybe the noise got loud enough. Maybe the harm was minimal, as he said, I guess, with Rose and Jackson now being passed away. It's a real shame, in my opinion, because I have believed that Pete Rose and Shoeless Joe Jackson have belonged in the Hall of Fame for years now. Just based on how I define the Hall of Fame and what I think belongs in Cooperstown. And I think we should celebrate all of the best and the worst of baseball in Cooperstown. And so we can celebrate Pete Rose. We can celebrate the great player that he was and the all-time hits leader in Major League Baseball, while also acknowledging what he did wrong. That was sort of a black eye for the game at the time. And we can have both of those things documented in Cooperstown. So it's a shame to me that this didn't happen while Pete Rose was alive and able to experience it as he wanted. But I do think they will both get in now that they're eligible. If we're able to do the whole Veterans Committee thing and go back and put Harold Baines on the Hall of Fame and people that don't actually belong in the Hall of Fame, sorry, White Sox fans. Yeah, Pete Rose should be in. Shoeless Joe Jackson should be in.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you said Harold Baines' name and not mine. I'm a big Hall guy. Like, I don't mind Baines being in. Dick Allen was just let the deserving players in instead of letting them that get blocked by these sort of middling compilers or whatnot. Lou Whitaker next, maybe Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens. Like, your definition of the Hall of Fame, I assume that you are a steroid era guy. I don't want to put words
pro steroid. I want all the steroid guys in. Yeah,
I do too. And
Barry
if anybody
Bonds,
wants,
I'm sorry, he's the greatest hitter ever, greatest player ever to ever live. As good as baseball has ever seen. You can't pretend like the guy just doesn't exist. Like, we can't do that.
And you're not putting him in the Hall. Spoiler alert for the baseball writers and those who run the Hall of Fame. That's not going to prevent dads from taking their kids to the Hall of Fame and going, hey, you know who is really awesome? Barry Bonds. The guy who holds all time.
Yeah, right. We acknowledge all the games that those guys played in. We acknowledge all the accomplishments that those guys earned as far as awards and whatnot, but can't put them in the Hall of Fame. It'll ruin the museum.
Yeah, I am with you. And if anybody wants to weigh in differently and feel differently in the comments, we are here for you. You can come find us, subscribe to the show, subscribe on YouTube, find us retroactively on podcast platforms. Weigh in, let us know. I do think that they are probably both getting in when the curtain raises, whenever that may be, whatever eras committee they're a part of. I think we're probably going to have to see what it's like to see a Hall of Fame ceremony honoring Pete Rose without Pete Rose present. It only gets weirder from here.
Yeah. Oof. Don't want to be the person that has to do that. So.
No. Guess what? I won't be in Cooperstown that day. I have chosen to opt out. Yeah, I think I have I'm going to respond to a Friday night text from several months ago on that day and be like, now I'm free. I can't make it. Okay, let's wrap with a fun one. Sam, you were on the last season of Survivor, season 47, season 48, getting into the home stretch now. And I can't make heads or tails of it. So in terms of like my prediction and my winner pick, I'm lost. I'm lost in the sauce. I think like I'm a Kyle guy at this point in time, but I really don't know. Do you have a season 48 winner pick? And if so, which MLB player are they most like?
So I do. I go back and forth between Kyle and Camilla. If you're watching the show, you know that, they're a little dynamic duo, right? I think one of them is going to end up pulling it out. Camilla, to me, let's put it in baseball terms. I think Camilla is a little bit of Corbin Carroll. Corbin Carroll is my pick for Camilla, right? A little bit undervalued because, she's not super prominent in the edit or the media. She's not part of the Majority Alliance, which would be a big market team. We know what Camilla does very well. She seems very strategic and pretty social, and there's always value in that, like Corbin Carroll's defense and base running. But when she's winning immunity challenges and adds physicality to her game, Camilla becomes the most dangerous player out there. That is Corbin Carroll when he is slugging and having some offensive production. She's the people's favorite. We know that, the writers and the baseball fans, they don't want to go see Shohei Ohtani win another MVP award. They don't want to see the status quo not be changed at all. And this jury might not want to see Joe and the same old people make it to the end and steamroll their way. So Camilla, the people's favorite with a strong finish, could get all of the support behind her and end up being the winner.
I love the pick. I love the pick so much. I'm going to get out of my seat with the jury and salute it silently, staring dead ahead at it for 20 seconds for whatever reason. Sam, Phalen, thank you so much for joining me on the Baseball Insiders. It was a pleasure. Where can the people find you? Anything else you'd like to plug?
Yeah, at Sam_Phalen. You see the tag right there on Twitter X. I'm tweeting Survivor stuff there, tweeting some baseball opinions out there. And then go check out Southside Showdown for all the White Sox coverage. We are churning out stuff on a daily basis, multiple things coming out every day, positive, negative, and everywhere in between on the Chicago White Sox. So 6-6 in the month of May, by the way, for the White Sox. Maybe not terrible anymore. We'll see. But go check it out and read everything about the Sox over at SouthsideShowdown.com.
And Miguel Vargas going yickety yesterday. So things are looking up. Sorry to our Cincinnati Reds fans on the stream. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Again, we'll be back here 3:30 Eastern on Friday with another big show. Fansided.com/baseball-insiders for more content. YouTube, subscribe, join us on the Discord. Audio feeds. I mean, wherever you get your podcasts, wherever podcasts are sold for $0, we will be there. And you can read more content on Southside Showdown as well if you are a White Sox inclined person. Sam, thank you so much for joining us. And we'll catch everybody else here later in the week. Turn on your notifications. You'll know when we're going live. Until then, take care, everybody.